As I said earlier, I am a recent graduate of the Eco-Chaplaincy program. And so this is a topic very dear to my heart. So I've been on this long, slow evolution towards being more connected with nature. And this accelerated exponentially during the pandemic. So before the lockdown, as people call it, I knew that I was always a little anxious in the mornings, and I would get up and get the kids off to school and go run errands and things like that, have my meetings. And I thought it was just this restlessness and anxiety was just something that I just needed to get out into the world, right, and connect with people. But then the pandemic came and we couldn't go anywhere, right? We had to stay home. And so I just went outside my front door and sat on my patio. And I realized I just needed to be outside. It was amazing how my nervous system just powered down. And so, at first I just started to meditate outside. And then it became my office. It was kind of funny. The UPS man, one time my husband was sitting out in the front, and the UPS man was like, "Where's Hilary? Like, why are you in her office?" So before that, I used to meditate inside and just trying to let go of my egocentric worries, right? But if only I had known how effortless it was to realize anatta, or not self, just by going outside, right? My fraught ego, buffeted by these 8 worldly winds of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, success and failure, that all fell away as I became part of a much bigger ecosystem. Grass and trees, bushes and flowers, birds and squirrels, big blue sky, the clouds, the sun, sometimes the rain. I was no longer a separate self, but part of something much bigger and interdependent. And I realized that it wasn't just up to me to go do stuff, make things happen, that all of nature was working with me to help create balance and equanimity. So this new feeling of belonging began to arise in me. I realized that the elements in my body were from the earth and formed in the stars, and that my genes were just the latest incarnation of a long line of ancestors who had been through countless traumatic events, including natural disasters, plagues, wars, to say nothing of childbirth and illness without modern medicine. And the most amazing thing of all is the realization, and this is not only true for me, it's true for every single one of us that's on the planet right now, alive, is that every single one of our progenitors lived long enough to birth and care for the next generation. Back through our parents, our grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents, all the way back to the first human and the first mammal on land and then in the water and the oceans, all the way back to the first one-celled organism 4.5 billion years ago. Every single one in our line from that beginning to where we are now lived through all kinds of of traumatic events and wonderful events for us to be here. Like, just take a moment and take that in. What is the probability of that? It's got to be less than 1%. It's got to be something infinitesimally small, and yet we are all here. So there have been a lot of ups and downs in the world's history, and there's a lot of disequilibrium on the planet right now. Not only in what's happening in terms of politics and wars, but the whole climate crisis, right? And some people say that we're at a tipping point, and there's not much time left. And so some people are just in total denial, right? Oh, just can't go there. And then others are just shut down in fear and paralysis. And some just want to distract. Like, I just want to try to be happy before, it all burns up. But in Buddhism, we are encouraged not to tell ourselves stories, right? Just be with what is. Don't tell yourself a story. But we humans do tell stories. And the story we tell matters. So it's called wise view, the first step on the Eightfold Path. With what eyes do we see? If we see through the eyes of hopelessness, we will passively let things happen without taking action. Action is the fourth step on the path, the Eightfold Path. But with hope, we move out of freeze into flow. I love this definition of hope. I read in a book called Rooted by Leanda Lynn Haupt. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation. But she found this in a Benedictine library in a book. It says, hope is that virtue by which we take responsibility for the future. We are co-creators, right, of our future, which is empowering. She says, the hope I'm interested in is about broad perspectives with specific possibilities, ones that invite or demand that we act. It's also not a sunny, everything is going to get better narrative, though it may be a counter to the everything is getting worse narrative. You could call it an account of complexities and uncertainties with openings. It's a recognition that we, in fact, do have the capability to turn things around. And if we have wise intention, step 2 on the path, combined with wise speech, action, livelihood, and effort, which are steps 3 through 6, we can do this. But first, we must all learn to love this beautiful earth. We will save what we love, what we cherish. But part of the problem is, as Leanda says in Rooting, in countless ways, modern culture and urban habits contrive to separate us from our indwelling earthen intelligence. While we have more scientific knowledge of the universe than any people ever had, it is not the type of knowledge that leads to an intimate presence within a meaningful universe. With the rise of the modern sciences, we began to think of the universe as a collection of objects rather than a communion of subjects. We talk about the earth in terms of resources, not as source of life, of nourishment, of beauty. So Robin Wall Kimmerer is a Native American scientist, a biologist. She says that we itch what we don't understand. When we see a bird or butterfly or tree or rock whose name we don't know, we it it. I would never point to you and call you it. It would steal your personhood. Itting turns gifts into natural resources. It gives us permission to see the land as an inanimate object. These beings are not it. They are our relatives. Instead, considering using ki, I think that's how she would pronounce it, ki, for singular, or kin for plural, spelled Ki. This is Kimmerer's invitation. Be more respectful of the natural world by using ki and kin instead of it. These are variants of the Anishinaabe word aki, meaning earthly being. And if you're concerned that this amounts to appropriation of native ideas, Kimmerer says that to appropriate is to steal, whereas adoption of ki and kin reclaims the grammar of animacy and is thus a gift. So living beings, even the rocks, the soil, and the water, infused with life. So we have a tendency to separate ourselves from nature, so objectify. But we also talk about taking a walk or going for a hike in nature, right? But the truth is we are nature. We are nature going to take a walk in nature. So how often do we do that really mindfully? When we do our walking meditation, we do that very mindfully. How often do we take a walk without taking our phone, without chatting with someone or listening to a podcast or listening to music or just snapping pictures all the time? I must admit, I do a lot of that, right? We want to capture the moment. It's okay to do that a little bit, but do we just stop and look? Do we just see sometimes? So there are many people who live in urban areas, right? Which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad idea for people to congregate kind of together and leaving wildness, more wilderness. Leanda says that new work in psychology reveals that simply the knowledge of flourishing wild, just knowing that there's wilderness, there's wildness, positively affects our psychology and creativity. And it's this knowledge that we are called to cultivate daily. So studies have shown that people in hospitals, when they can see out a window and see greenery, their healing accelerates. Simply the fragrance of certain trees invokes calm. Does anybody, like if I just say pine tree, can you have a felt sense of that? I do. And it brings some calm. And recorded nature sounds also do that for us. Even gazing at a house plant. So wherever we are, even in a high-rise apartment, in the city, gaze upon a houseplant. Look out the window. Step out onto the balcony or onto the rooftop. Connect with the skies, the clouds, the sun, the rain, the birds. In a book called Church of the Wild by Victoria Lours, she says, we long to experience the sacred, and in that longing, forget to look outside our window and engage in conversation with a world that is already sacred. But better still, take a walk outside, right? In Japan in the early 1980s, health practitioners started to realize the benefits of walking in nature. Shinrin yoku, forest bathing. And healthcare practitioners would actually prescribe people to go do forest bathing. And in 2016, Professor Miyazaki compiled all these scientific studies, and he said that all of our psychophysiological functions are adapted to natural outdoor settings. His research showed how walks outside lower blood pressure, decrease the heart rate, reduce cortisol production, improve blood sugar levels, improve immune function, and just overall physiological relaxation. Just 15 minutes a day, forest walkers had a 102% increase in the parasympathetic calming. Right? So it's like when we take a deep breath, a long, slow out breath in our meditation, it activates that parasympathetic nervous system. Let's just do that right now together. Breathing deeply in, long, slow out breath. How do you feel? I feel instantly better. I don't know about you. It's so easy. And being outside also helps to do that for our nervous system. It's a way of letting go, of releasing dukkha, suffering. So one of the daily practices we were encouraged to do in eco-chaplaincy was to find a sit spot. Does anybody have a sit spot? Do you know about that? No? Okay. So choose a special place outside where you can return to daily. For me, it's just going out and sitting on my patio out in front of my house. Get to know the land that you're sitting on. Get to know the rooted green beings and the four-legged and winged beings, along with the changing light, the different times of year, the changing seasons. So perhaps you've heard of the term kith and kin, and we all know what kin is, and I was like, what is kith? Does anybody know what kith is? It actually means the land where you are. So with the exception of Native Americans, we are a nation of immigrants, right? Whether or not our ancestors or we chose to come here in search of new opportunities or came against our will as slaves, we are transplants, right? Just like plants from another place. We are from somewhere else. And we can feel uprooted and not feeling a sense of belonging where we are. So finding a sit spot is a way to help us cultivate that feeling of belonging. In the book Rooted, Leander refers to this as return and be claimed. Not only do we come to know this place, this sit spot, but we feel a mutuality of being known to each other. In her book, she writes that Linda Mapes, who wrote a book called Witness Tree, spent a whole year visiting a single oak tree every day. And she told me she has no doubt that in time, the tree recognized her presence, that they belonged to each other. So Thich Nhat Hanh engaged in hugging as spiritual practice. When he said, when we hug, our hearts connect, and we know that we are not separate beings. Breathing in, I know my dear one is in my arms, alive. Breathing out, so precious to me. If you do this The tree being hugged will be nourished and bloom like a flower. So on an Eco Chaplaincy retreat, we were invited to connect with the tree, first asking the tree's permission, right? We want to be really respectful. And so when we feel that permission is given, perhaps we might simply gaze at the tree, we might feel its bark, we might lean against the tree, we might wrap our arms around the tree, and we might just listen for some wisdom it might have for us. So we were in a beautiful redwood forest in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and there was just straight up to the sky, 100, 200 feet, these redwood trees. And so I was wandering outside, trying to find my tree that I was going to connect with. And one just caught my interest. And I walked over and asked if it was okay if I could connect with her. And I felt it was a yes. And this tree was bent, was curved over, and then it went this way and that way, trying to find the light in this forest of giants. And I felt such a deep kinship, a resonance, like how I too in my life, right, had to bend and twist and turn, trying to find nourishment and reach for the light. And for all the twists and turns and bentness and the crookedness of this trunk, it stood up through the storms, right? And so I thanked her for sharing that wisdom, right, and her strength. And I felt stronger inside of myself for connecting with this beautiful tree. So another practice we might engage in is called earthing. I know this was really popular, I don't know, decades ago, maybe in the 70s, where you take off your shoes and you put your feet on the ground. Has anybody done that? So we speak of being grounded, right, for some stability. And in terms of electricity, right, we need that third prong that goes into the outlet, right? In case there's a surge of electricity, it actually goes into the ground, right? The ground absorbs it. So when we place our bare feet on the earth, anxiety and stress can flow from us into the earth. I have done this myself, and I've done this with people that I know who have been really emotionally dysregulated in the middle of a panic attack. And it has a very calming effect. Walking with your feet, your bare feet on the ground. Thich Nhat Hanh, he's passed away, but I speak of him in the present tense because his teachings live on. Thich Nhat Hanh invites us through mindful walking to feel that each footstep is kissing the earth. So in Rooted, Leonda combines both practices, hugging a tree with bare feet. She describes the experience. With shoes shed, we become closer to them, the trees, as our mentors, putting not just a cheek, but an ear directly upon a tree's bark allows deep listening. The rhythmic movement of the blood in our bodies, the craniosacral fluid of our spines and skulls mirrors the movement of sap in the trees. The breeze in our rustling hair is the same as that in the leaves, the branches, the clouds. She also reads to the trees. She likes to read Emily Dickinson in particular. In the book, The Enchanted Life by Sharon Blackie, she tells the story of restoration ecologist Suprabha Shashan, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, from India, who sings as she walks through the jungle. And she says, partly because the animals sing so sweetly to me all the time, it's their generosity that I aspire to match. But singing is also my direct announcement to others in the forest. I am here. I walk alone. I come in peace. I believe that singing transmits much more than presence. It carries information about the state of my body, the state of my emotion, and my intention. They can, of course, choose to stay or leave, but usually they are not alarmed and they know it's me, the singing woman from the hill. So when I sit in meditation, sometimes in the morning, I'll do some chanting. And I've noticed sometimes the birds will get quiet as I chant. And I feel like somehow I'm singing to them. And then I stop and they start singing. And I feel like they're singing to me. So we sing to each other. Or when the raven caws. Actually, this happened just before I came here. I was sitting outside and there was a raven, I think connecting with another one in another tree. But I tried to answer back. Caw, caw. Although I'm afraid I do not know what I said. I'm hoping it wasn't anything bad. Because I would love to know raven language, but I don't. So there are many ways to connect with our kith and kin. In the children's program, the Dharma Sprouts, we sing this Betsy Rose song that's called Breathing In, Breathing Out. And we actually meditate also. The words go, I am blooming as a flower, and as we breathe in, we open our flowers. Fresh as the dew, I am solid as the mountain, and the kids put their hands up over their heads like a mountain. Firm as the earth, I'm feeling the earth firm beneath us. I am water reflecting what is real, what is true. And I feel there is space deep inside of me, and I'm free. So in Buddhist terms, to be equanimous is to be centered and grounded. To feel grounded on the earth, we sit in meditation. We're sitting cross-legged like a mountain, right? We are in the shape of a mountain, wide at the base, right? Smaller at the top. Feeling that stability. And when we sit upright, their backbone straight, we're like the trunk of a tree. And our breath is like that reflection, the blue sky reflection, right? Reflecting what is, accepting without resistance. And we make space inside and around us, cultivating peace. So there were two very pivotal experiences of the Buddha on his journey to enlightenment. And he began with one of them is remembering a time when he was 6, and he was sitting under a rose apple tree, and he could hear the adults in the distance. They were doing a ritual tilling of the ground. And it said that he sat in seclusion from sensual desire, feeling an utter sense of contentment and happiness that came from within himself. It wasn't dependent on something outside of himself. And yet I cannot help but feel that it was through the 5 senses that he felt his way into a deep sense of peace, into samadhi. I imagine the shade of an overarching tree, this rose apple tree, keeping him a little cooler as the warmth from the sun lulled him, and the apple blossoms so beautifully blooming. I can imagine looking through the branches of the tree up to the blue sky. And the smell of the apple blossoms. Hearing the hum of the insects and the chirping of birds, feeling the firm ground beneath his body. Another pivotal moment was sitting under the Bodhi tree. He committed to staying there until he achieved enlightenment. So Mara sends all kinds of things, enticements and fears, armies of demons and terrible storms. And finally, the final challenge on this path to enlightenment was self-doubt. Who do you think you are to become enlightened? Right? The Buddha did not answer with words. He simply reached down and touched the earth. And the earth affirmed his worthiness, as each one of us is equally worthy to become enlightened. So nature teaches us so many things. And one of the most important is non-judgmental awareness, right? That is like the basic definition of mindfulness. It is an unself-conscious beingness, right? Nature teaches us that, right? No matter how we come into nature that we are going out into nature, no matter how well dressed or bare-skinned we are, right? Whether we are sad or we're anxious, we are bathed or we don't smell good, right? We are not shamed or shunned. We're just part of nature, just another animal. If we are respectful, we are welcome. We are not separate, right? And in our connections with Mother Nature, we begin to feel this appreciation, this gratitude, love. In Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, knowing that you love the earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms a relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond. The land loves us back. She loves us with beans and tomatoes, with roasting ears of corn and blackberries and bird songs, by a shower of gifts and a heavy rain of lessons. She provides for us and teaches us to provide for ourselves. That's what good mothers do. So, in Reclaiming the Wild Soul by Mary Reynolds Thompson, she says, if we don't reclaim and come to love our inner wildness, how much more of the earth's wild places will we be willing to destroy? Let the great rewilding of our world begin with you, with me, with all of us. Whoever we are, wherever we live, no matter our ethnicity, our sex, our religion, political affiliation, nationality, we are all children of this earth. And when we climb up to a mountain or we fly up in an airplane, we look down upon the land, there are no map lines, right? And if we are able to escape Earth's gravity, we will find ourselves in the blackness of outer space, looking back at the Earth. Only astronauts have had this perspective. And they have brought back pictures, one in particular, Earthrise. I'm sure everybody's seen that beautiful picture of the Earth from the moon. And they've brought back accounts, personal accounts of how this moved them so deeply. And in the words of one astronaut, Edgar Mitchell, suddenly from behind the rim of the moon, in long, slow motion moments of immense majesty, there emerges a sparkling blue and white jewel, a light, delicate sky blue sphere laced with slowly swirling veils of white, rising gradually like a small pearl in a thick sea of black mystery. It takes more than a moment to fully realize this is Earth, home. So, may we all know ourselves as one family with a deep love and appreciation for kith and kin, knowing that not only do we love the earth, but the earth loves us back. And may we save the earth, save what we love. So, thank you for your attention. And now we have some time for questions and for reflections and for connecting with each other about how this may have landed for you and what comes up for you. So, does anybody have anything they want to share or any questions? Or how this might feel in your body and your heart? And I also want to invite people to, one thing that I like to do sometimes is to invite people into small groups of 3 or so. If you want to really feel a deeper connection with Sangha and community, if that feels something that you'd like to do, maybe you could gather into groups of 3 and then just share, how was this for you? And then we can come back together and see what came up for you. So feel free to do that. Say hi, introduce yourself, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. If you want to come back to our larger circle, I'd love to hear a few shares about what came up for you.
We decided we would all like to be astronauts.
Well, Jim here works for NASA, so perhaps he can help you. I'm too claustrophobic, frankly, to go up.
Knowing me and $5 will get you a cup of coffee. It used to be 25 cents, but...
Oh. I actually have. I got it for one of my kids who loves astronauts and things that are space-oriented. And I have a poster of Earthrise that is signed by Edgar Mitchell. And there's something that's very special about, I don't know, I kind of put my hand on the signature. It's like, wow, this person has actually been, in space looking back at Earth. Whoa, that's special. Yeah. Oh, do you want the microphone? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Online.
Testing. Oh yeah. I think one of the things we talked about, or I certainly shared a lot about this word alienation, and the example. I think it comes up for a lot of us, but just how disconnected we are from. Nature is one of them, but like it could be from each other, the things that we do, and so I thought of the kind of supermarket, 'cause I'm going there later, but just how many things we take for granted that like we don't know where the source is necessarily, or
Of the food.
the process,
Oh, yeah.
food, anything. I mean, so we partition things. We're like, oh, this is water. This is bottled and it's here, and you buy it. Like we create these extra things, and so a lot of the exercises and just thinking about and connecting back to nature makes you kind of realize like kind of how roundabout it is that we do all these things to like repurpose it or sell it back to each other, things like that. So it was, you can never overthink that, I think.
Yeah, but I love the way when we do a blessing on food, when we think about the interconnectedness, like when we're actually taking in nourishment, like how much there is that we are taking in. Thich Nhat Hanh, I loved how he's with this interbeing teachings. Talks about with every bite of food we're taking in the soil the food grew in, and the sun, and the clouds, and the rain, and all of, and the farmers, and the farm workers, and the people, the truck drivers, and the store people at the store, and pretty soon it's like, oh my gosh, who wasn't involved with this, right? We're so interdependent. It's amazing. And the thing that I love too about really focusing on putting our attention on food is that when I used to think about this earth as being kind of like a nightmare of everything's trying to eat everything else, whether it's plants or animals. I mean, it's like we're eating each other. It's like, oh, that's awful. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. It's like, it's a sacrament. It is a gifting of life to each other. Like when I eat the strawberry, it's like it was a seed and it grew and it got plump and red and juicy. And then it got picked and then I take it in, right? And it's a strawberry that's gifted its life to me. And I am now taking it in and it becomes part of me. To nourish my cells, it's like, wow, I mean, some people talk about sacralizing, making sacred, everyday life. And when we really stop to think about it, it's hard not to, right? Thank you for that share. Anything else? One share maybe, or? Or not. But I do want to finish with, I've got this poem that is called No Matter What by Kai Siedenberg from a book of poems, Poems of Earth and Spirit. No matter how hard they try, they cannot keep us apart. They can pour concrete over the rich, dark earth, put us in a plastic chair inside a sheetrock box, hook us up to electronic devices and tell us we have to stay there all day. And still, we will be breathing the breath of towering pines growing on rugged mountain slopes and tiny green plankton floating in distant seas. And even though the water we drink travels through many miles of pipe, is doused with chlorine, and may be contained in plastic bottles, still, we will be drinking water that has tumbled over granite boulders, hibernated in frozen lakes, and reflected the morning sun from a spider's web. And even though the salad we eat may be grown hundreds of miles away, harvested and washed by hands we will never see, and packaged in a plastic box, still we will be eating leaves from plants whose roots embrace the fertile earth as their tender green bodies reach toward the light. And no matter how relentlessly we have been trained to sit still, to hold our tongues, to follow the rules, even when they make no sense, still, we are animals of flesh and blood, kin to deer, bear, and whale, with deep wisdom in our bones and untamed passions in our hearts. Still, there's a wild one inside us running barefoot through the forest, gathering sweet berries, dancing around the fire, singing to the moon. So I hope that we will be more mindfully, bodily connected to the earth, to the cosmos, and that we will really love this earth and do all we can to save the planet from more desecration, and with hopefulness, right? With hopefulness, we can do it. We just need to come together, right? And so thank you so much for your coming this evening, for your practice, and take good care, and hope to see you soon.